What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today I'm giving you some breakout candidates from the obvious to the maybe guys down to my sleeper picks, and hopefully you will enjoy today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button to help me out a ton. And if you're new right here, want to see more football content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button down below and give me some of your breakout picks. I mean, you can go as obvious as some of the names on this very first slide you see on your screen now to maybe some more obscure names, or maybe some veterans you think are in the right spot finally and could be like a Rasul Douglas from last year in Green Bay. Love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment, so give me some breakout candidates down below in the comment section. So let's start with the obvious names, and now let me also get this out into the air real quick. This was a pretty hard exercise, so even some of the dark horse names that you'll see at the very end, you might think of that as an obvious candidate. This is also kind of a subjective process because depending on how hard you follow a team, you may be seeing a whole lot of buzz coming out of training camp about that specific player, and maybe that's not so much on my Twitter feed or something I'm seeing a whole lot of on TV or whatever. So it's a little subjective, so don't wring me by the neck too much. But if you think I got a guy in the wrong section, tell me why. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So let's jump into it, starting with the obvious. So second-year quarterbacks is a very broad stroke. I'll make my pick Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, I know, hey, Tej, wow, the guy who went number 1 overall was heralded as the best quarterback prospect since, like, Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. Yeah, it's kind of the safest one. It's why he's on the obvious list. But I think the situation's improved. Spent a whole lot of money during the offseason. I'm still not totally in love with their wide receiver options, but it is better than where they were at last year. And, I mean, there's no bigger upgrade that this team could have made by hiring anybody other than Urban Meyer. And then that person they hired, Doug Peterson, former Super Bowl champion, did wonders with Carson Wentz, so former quarterback himself as well. So no reason to think that Trevor Lawrence can't take that step forward. So he's my pick for the second-year quarterbacks, but whether you think it's Zach Wilson, Trey Lance has had some highlight moments that have looked good on Twitter, or more progress out of Mac Jones or Davis Mills or Justin Fields, whoever you think it's going to be, it's totally plausible. But I just kind of wanted to go second-year quarterbacks because I could have listed all 6 of those guys that I just named. And second-year wide receivers, again, I could have listed off a myriad of names. Rondale Moore was kind of my honorable mention here. I'm interested to see how Cliff Kingsbury uses him, but I also don't have a whole lot of faith in Cliff Kingsbury, so I decided to go Rashad Bateman. I've talked about this in my season preview video for the Ravens. Makes a ton of sense. He's the clear-cut target one when it comes to the wide receivers. Mark Andrews, obviously, the number 1 target overall, but when it comes to the wideout group, Bateman is that guy, and I am very biased to polished route runners. That's exactly what I saw him as coming out of Minnesota. Maybe not exactly as big or as heavy in that sense of like poundage, obviously, and physicality that it was originally listed out on the Minnesota website. I'm still holding on to that. That 6'3", like 210 posting. It's not quite that big, but he has the traits and the skill set, solid hands, and that route running ability to be a possession wide receiver. And be interesting when you add another guy who can work over the middle of the field. How does that, what up to that true, top 10 pick hype that he had coming out of Houston. But that's the other thing, is he's coming from, a group of 5 school and making that leap to the NFL. So maybe it just took a little bit more time for Ed Oliver, and it's starting to seem like he's living up to it. And, maybe it just took having a legitimate future Hall of Famer on the edge in Von Miller to kind of open up some of that on the inside. Now, again, we're talking about training camp. We'll see how that really translates to the game itself, but maybe it's mentorship, or maybe it's just, hey, the offense understands and training camp, hey, they got Von Miller over there. We got to respect that. And that's kind of opened up opportunities for Ed Oliver to shine. But this feels like a year where the Bills could truly have that interior presence they have been looking for since they drafted Ed Oliver. And if not Ed Oliver, honorable mention to Tim Settle. I think he could have, obviously, a career year. He was buried on that depth chart in Washington behind, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and Matt Ioannidis, too. It could be an opportunity for him to showcase his talent. Moving on, Washington player and Sam Cosmi. He actually had a really nice rookie year. almost 500 snaps, overall grade. I'm using a lot of Pro Football Focus numbers in this video just because that's the easiest way to kind of have a conventional grading system across the board, but right around a 75 grade, better in run blocking, 81.3 versus his pass. He and then one other guy we're going to talk about a little bit later on kind of profiled immediately as better impacts in the running game than they were as pass protectors. And Cosme, namely, I think they got him at a good value in a second-round pick. I'll add that. But with a guy where there was going to be some technique that needed to be changed as he made the transition from Texas to the NFL. And that seemingly has been the process. So looks like he's going to have a strong chance and clear line front runner to be the right tackle there in Washington. So soon to be starter. If the offseason's paid off and they've cleaned up that pass protection, I think he could be in for a huge year too. And then Jonathan Grenard, edge rusher for the Houston Texans. And this guy kind of had a sneaky, quiet, freaky year. 414 snaps and a pass rush grade of an 89.2. And that is, 90 is kind of that elite threshold. But damn, you put up those numbers. I know it's Houston, so not a whole lot of people may be watching those games, but Jonathan Grenard started to put it together last year. And we're going to talk about one more Texans pass rusher. And if Grenard and that other player both hit, you might have that edge rush duo of the future there in Houston, which, go and watch some of my season previews videos, and it'll be the same thing when I get to the Houston Texans. A realistic goal for certain franchises that know they're not going to win the Super Bowl is just, who are those guys that fan bases can look forward to buying their jersey? Who's that next jersey I'm going to buy? And who are these guys in 5 years, maybe when we're in a Super Bowl window, can I think is still going to be on the roster? Jonathan Grenard could totally be that for the Houston Texans. And if he plays like he did last year, just on a bigger sample size, he is a true breakout candidate. Let's move on to the maybe guys. And, some of these are, again, totally plausible candidates as duh. So this is, again, a little subjective. But Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, first-round pick in 2021 by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A little bit of a disappointment his rookie year. Had a solid snap size, a little up and over 600 snaps. Saw the field pretty heavily. But that being said, 50.9 overall grade and 57.5 pass rush grade. That's disappointing. And that comes in the context of having both Shaquille Barrett, who he was a little disappointing last year as well, and JPP towards the end of his career. But if Tampa Bay needed Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to develop or wasn't ready to play, yeah, those two guys. This year you don't have that luxury. Now you would think year two Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is going to be ready to go, but that being said, he is locked into a starting spot now that there's no JPP, so he is going to have to step up. And if Joe Tryon-Shoyinka does take that step forward, it makes the life of Shaquille Barrett that much easier. So huge X-Factor player. He was a guy coming out of Washington, transformed his body, kind of built himself into a whole new type of dude. So maybe there's a little bit of a transition there. And obviously going from, Washington, he missed a year, did not play during the COVID season, and then going to the NFL, there's just going to be a natural transition there, of course. So maybe it just took a little bit of time, a year or two, maybe he'll hit the ground running. And if that pass rush is there for Tampa Bay consistently, because they had moments last year where it came and went, but if they have it consistently throughout the year, that defense is going to be crazy. And then next up, we'll talk about Christian Barmore, another second-year player. You're going to see a whole lot of that on this list. I do apologize. Tried not to get too dependent on those second-year players, so there's some variety as we move forward. But 76.2 pass rush grade last year. That was his bread and butter coming out of Alabama, going to New England Patriots. This guy's going to get to the quarterback. Not great against the run. How about 44.7 run defense grade last year? That's not very good. But you got to think, Bill Belichick's and that coaching staff's working with him on it. He's got to get marginally better there. But nonetheless, I think there's going to be a snap increase, 631 snaps last year. I think he can see the field even a little bit more and just continue to get incrementally better. And, if that pass rush grade goes from the mid-40s into the 50s, who's to say that pass rush grade can't go from the mid-70s into the 80s and give the Patriots that true interior, dominant force maybe that they haven't had in a while. And then, of course, you add that wrinkle into that defense and it makes the life of, Kyle Van Noy that much easier. And the edge rushers all around, and Matt Judon, of course, in there as well. So I think Barmore, the talent was never really in question. Should have been a first-round pick, in my opinion, but there were some reports as we made through day one of the 2021 draft that there's some character concerns and motivation concerns for NFL teams. But, obviously we saw the pass rush talent put on display last year. I think Bill Belichick is the exact guy. If you have character concerns for a guy to go from Saban to Belichick, I feel like that's a seamless transition, and I think Barmore is in for a strong year too. Christian Darrisaw, from one Christian to the next. Darrisaw looked pretty good once he got out of the field for the Minnesota Vikings last year, and he's the clear-cut starting left tackle heading into this season, and 652 snaps last year, 71.9 overall grade, and just like we talked about with Cosme, better run blocking grades than pass protection, but especially Darrisaw. Maybe you can make the argument Cosme really good pass protector at Texas, but with flawed technique. Maybe you could say expectations where he'd be better in the passing game. For Christian Darrisaw, it's clear cut. This dude is an unbelievable run blocker. It kind of had some shades of Trent Williams, but had some shades of that in there, where this dude is just an absolute force to be reckoned with in the run game. Will polish up and fix up the pass protection. We've seen how that's worked out for Trent Williams. So I think with another full offseason under his belt, some more time to work with the coaching, and just maturation and work ethic coming into play here for Christian Darrisaw, he'll clean up that pass protection and continue to be an 80+ type of left tackle in the run game. And then that's a huge bolster to a team that has spent what feels like a decade now trying to fix that offensive line. If you get that bookend left tackle, you're in great shape. And I think Darrisaw can totally take that step forward, break out, and be that type of guy for the Vikings. Another offensive lineman, Landon Dickerson, a guy who saw the field a ton last year, 900 plus snaps last year, and better as a run blocker than as a pass protector. Similar trend here. I just think this is one where I like the prospect a ton coming out of Alabama, and kind of like we talked about with Barmore. Sometimes takes a little bit of time, but these guys coming from Alabama to the NFL have a really sound track record. And we even talked about it a little bit in my Browns season preview video, which is the last one to go up on the channel. Talked about Jedrick Wills. Sometimes offensive linemen, it takes about 2 to 3 years for them to fully hit the ground running. And for these breakout candidates, I'm obviously hoping Darrisaw and Dickerson and crew hit the ground running in year 2 versus year 3. But like Jedrick Wills is a good example. A low 60 graded player for his first 2 years of his career, and then I'm thinking in year 3 he'll get a little bit better and maybe take that step forward and become that in and around top 10 pick that the Browns took him at. So I think that's on the horizon here for Landon Dickerson. He does have that center guard flexibility, but I think sticking at guard is the most likely situation going into this season. But I just think there's just kind of a trusting of former Alabama player, trusting the process. It's an an organization that has always put in the work when it comes to making sure they have depth in the trenches and talent there in the trenches. So there's no reason to think that the Eagles haven't been trying to work with Landon Dickerson and have him take that step forward in year 2. So I'm buying into a number of different factors to see Landon Dickerson become a very quality guard in year 2. And then I'm cheating a little bit here with my fifth players. It's Rock Ya-Sin and Trayvon Mullen. Both guys, and the reason I have Rock Ya-Sin first is he's coming off a year in Indianapolis where he actually had his best season per Pro Football Focus grading. Trayvon Mullen has been, kind of that mid-50s player both years in the league. And these two guys, both second-round picks, feel like I am iffy about them. And it's hard to put them on this list because I'm not entirely sure they're going to take this jump just from my evaluation of their talent, both as when they were coming out of college, though I did like Rock Ya-Sin and his body build and who he could be and become. But I am a little hesitant on both the talent that's there in these situations. But it is interesting to go from a very cover 3 heavy Gus Bradley system and one that we saw the Chiefs pick apart. And if you know how to beat it, you can beat it big time. And go to working with the guy with Patrick Graham, who I know the Giants defense wasn't as good as people thought, but you go back 2 years ago, that was a unit that definitely exceeded expectations. Had their ups and downs last year, but I still think of Patrick Graham as a great defensive coach. What wonders can he work with those corners? And it's also a defense that's going to be a lot more varied. So it's interesting there when you're not playing as much cover 3, like the Chiefs dropping 40-point bombs left and right, twice in a 3-week period against the Raiders because they knew cover 3, we know how to beat it. Now you're going to see Patrick Graham, he ran cover 3, ran cover 4, ran a lot of cover 1 man. So a variety of coverages. That makes the job for Mullen and Rock Ya-Sin that much harder, but it also allows offenses to stay honest against those two. So does that get more out of those play? I'm a little more hesitant about Rock Ya-Sin, despite him coming off of the career best grading season a year ago, just because that Matt Eberflus defense kind of felt like a nice fit, long corner who can play in the flat, get his hands on footballs. That kind of made sense. Mullen, a little coming out of Clemson, kind of felt like he had the skill set to be able to play varied coverages and stick a little bit better in man-to-man. I'm not entirely sure Rock Ya-Sin will be as good at man-to-man coverage, so I'm cheating a little bit. But I think one of these two guys could take that step forward. Now, true breakout, even I'm a little hesitant on, but it's totally plausible. They have the opportunity. They're the starting cornerbacks on the the Vegas Raiders roster, so it's totally in line and it's totally plausible. So they have the opportunity in front of them. And I think working with Patrick Graham can only make you better. So one of these two guys, or maybe even both, could certainly break out this upcoming year. And let's get on to my dark horses. Now, again, you might look at these, and especially number 4, he's been getting a ton of training camp love, even at the time of me recording this, and you're seeing it about a week later. So totally understand some of these guys are going to feel like duh guys rather than dark horse candidates. But let's go Will Hernandez, guard for the Cardinals. And Hernandez is such an interesting case study, and he's one of these players that I saw the situation kind of just unravel around him. So you go look at Hernandez in his rookie year. That's his career best, 67.9 grade. And even that, not great. But as a rookie, that's a solid place to begin your career. And every year after, it only got a little worse. And you had that blow up. I think it was back in 2018, if that's correct. Mark Colombo was the offensive line coach. Had a huge blow up with Joe Judge, and it felt like that situation never really got resolved. And again, you see that trend of a guy starts out at a high point and continuously gets worse year over year. I just feel like he was in a bad situation for himself, and it was also obviously an offensive line that Andrew Thomas eventually kind of figured it out in year 2, but he struggled as a rookie, so I'm not sure he got the proper coaching. He's still a young guy in his mid-20s, 27 if memory serves, maybe 26. But there's still plenty of time for him to turn around his career and just getting in a fresh place. That can do wonders, and getting with a new coaching staff and, having an organization that's going to buy back into you, right? The Cardinals sign him, they must see something, versus the Giants, who you have this weird squabble between the head coach, offensive line coach, nothing ever kind of felt resolved thereafter. New beginnings for Will Hernandez. I think he could take a step forward. It's obviously a position of need, too. There was a lot of people talking about the Cardinals maybe going IOL in the first round of last year's NFL draft. They went out and signed Will Hernandez. I think he could be a sneaky, really solid value signing and proved to be a capable starter for the Cardinals, which is, maybe not a true break. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. He's going to become the next Zach Martin. But to go from a mid-50s graded player to more than capable starter in 1 year's time, I think of that as a breakout. And next up, Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo. I feel a lot more sound in my last name pronunciation there, so if I butchered the first name, I do apologize. But Okoronkwo is what I'll refer to him as the edge rusher. This is the other Houston Texan player I would talk about. And, kind of similar numbers when you compare him and Jonathan Grenard for Okoronkwo. Smaller sample size with the LA Rams last year, 314 snaps, but a pass rush grade at 75.3, overall grade at 79.5. Small sample size, but those numbers are encouraging and something to build off of. So in Houston, he's going to have every opportunity to win the job. I mean, the Texans are not going to win the Super Bowl this year, so anytime they think, and it's a 1-year deal, they're going to want to see quick and as much as possible if this is a guy we want to re-sign next offseason. Is he a part of our championship window? Because we'll have the first dibs to sign him, so should we prioritize that? So if those numbers carry over onto a bigger sample size, this dude will be getting a multi-year deal next offseason, and it'll probably be for good money because he's in his mid-20s. But if not, then he'll kind of go by the wayside. But you look at the numbers last year with the Rams, they're encouraging, and he'll have every opportunity at his disposal in Houston to be a starter and continue that production. And also, again, we talked about Jonathan Grenard earlier. He might even be the top edge rusher that offenses are circling, their game prep. They might be saying, hey, we got to slow down Grenard. And that might open up a few more one-on-ones and easy opportunity, quote-unquote easy opportunities for Okoronkwo to come away with wins and sacks and boost those numbers even more. So good situation to find himself in. I kind of wish Houston signed him to a 2 to 3 year cheap deal as opposed to just the cheap 1-year deal. But I can see from Okoronkwo's side, he probably negotiated that way for a reason. Number 3, Richie Grant. This picture alone makes him worthy of inclusion, in my opinion, on this list. But I was a big Richie Grant guy, top 40 pick in the 2021 NFL draft. Out of UCF, had a really strong Senior Bowl. Maybe not the most unbelievable athlete, the most fleet of foot, but the coverage ability was sound, and this guy could also come to the box and lay the wood. So there's so much working for him. And a majority of his snaps last year actually played at slot corner, which you think about a guy who can come down to the box and maybe he's not super fast or twitchy. Maybe that makes sense. I'm kind of hoping the Falcons, I'm not even kind of hoping, I am just legitimately hoping the Falcons rotate him back in that free safety spot and trust his instincts, or even play him at strong safety. I'm just not in love with that slot corner fit for him, but still 192 snaps out of the slot out of 226. Guy didn't see the field a whole lot in general, so he was getting the bench treatment to guys like Eric Harris. That's not necessarily a huge sign of confidence for how the Falcons saw him once they got to see him on the field, but maybe it was just a time thing. Maybe that Dean Pease defense, especially from a safety perspective, maybe it takes more time to kind of fully immerse yourself in, to fully understand what's in front of you and what your assignment is. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not there. But I'm hoping in year 2 the talent comes through and they'll move him back to safety, and we'll see kind of the Richie Grant that I expected to see on the field when he was a second-round pick by the Falcons. Because he definitely disappointed as a rookie. I think year 2, he can put it back together. And then Romeo Doubs, the number 4 player that I alluded to earlier, that training camp hype is hot. I've already, ESPN's talking about it on NFL Live, NFL Pod from Pro Football Focus is talking about it. So now, by the time you see this, you might have been Romeo dubbed out. And I totally get that. But from the minute he got drafted, day 3 selection, you go back, cover my draft content. I graded every draft class. I said this was a great value for starters, but 2, just a great scheme fit for Aaron Rodgers, but a guy who could totally replace MVS strictly as the vertical route wide receiver. If this guy runs nothing but goes, posts, and comebacks, I think you're good. And I think he'll develop a chemistry really quick with Aaron Rodgers, which has been kind of the early rumblings through Packers training campus. These two have been able to connect, and there's some chemistry there. So there's a shot where Romeo Doubs sees the field more than Christian Watson, as Watson a little bit more of a project, needs to be more polished, both as a route runner, but also just ball tracking and watching the ball in and having more consistent hands. So Doubs could be the rookie that actually sees the field a little bit more. And again, this is that vertical wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers, who has learned to play within the system and take check downs, but he's still Aaron Rodgers at heart. He's still looking for the big play. He's looking to throw bombs, so Doubs could totally be that guy on the other end. And I was a big fan of him at Nevada. Go back early draft, go really digging on this channel, go back to my early draft content. I was hyping up him and Carson Strong's connection in my first big board, and I was making arguments that they both could be potential first-round picks as early as then, or even my first mock draft last year. So big Romeo Doubs guy. I hate that he fell to day 3, but I think he found himself in a perfect situation to thrive. And then another second-year player, Davion Nixon. Got hurt after week 7 last year with the Panthers, but week 6 set a high for snaps played in the game, and then he topped that in week 7 before his injury. And this is a regime that's looking to win games. Matt Rule's out there to save his job. So if Derek Brown disappoints, sorry, bud, find the bench. If Matt Ioannidis is only on a 1-year deal, I know Temple player reuniting with Matt Rule. I almost put Matt Ioannidis on here, but the step forward for Matt Ioannidis from solid NFL player, rotational interior rusher to superstar feels maybe a little more fathomable, or maybe a little less fathomable than someone who didn't play the second half of last year, was a 5th-round pick after some early draft process love for Davion Nixon, including coming from myself out of Iowa. I was a big fan of him, and I still thought he should have gone way before the 5th round. I thought that was one of the better value adds of any team when the Panthers took Nixon in the 5th. So really solid pick. Loved it from a starting point there. But again, if Matt Ioannidis ain't producing, Matt Rule's going to take him out of the field. If Derek Brown ain't living up to standards, he's going to be off the field. And that's where Davion Nixon kind of comes in. And, not overly impressive when it comes to the stats or anything like that, but still showed a little something. And actually, if you again go to Pro Football Focus grading and you turn off, you ignore the snap minimum, he's one of the top guys there as an interior defender. So I think the pass rushing ability has always been there. Maybe you question his ability to stop the run, and that was kind of part of what held him up after his last year at Iowa and when he headed in the NFL draft. He's definitely more of an interior pass rusher than a true 3-down defensive tackle. So that might limit how many opportunities he gets on the field. But I'm a big believer in Davion Nixon, and even if it's just him going from 5th-round player to big part of the rotation, impact 3rd-down pass rusher or passing down situation guy you have to have on the field, that feels like a solid breakout for a guy who, again, only played 7 weeks last year, and I think mid-20s was the most snaps he had in any game. So big-time progress, but I'm a big believer in Davion Nixon. I think he might have the opportunity, despite I know Derek Brown and I know Matt Ioannidis are there. I think Matt Rule's trying to win games, and if Nixon's showing out, he'll see the field. But that is going to do it for my 15 breakout candidates. Again, be nice to me. I know some of these names are maybe in the wrong spots, but let me hear what you think. Do I have these players in the wrong spot, or who are some breakout candidates that I didn't have on here that you think could be in for a huge season next year? Love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about these breakout candidates down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. And if you're around here, want to see more sports content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.